Welcome viewers to today's broadcast. My name remains Paul, and today is Sunday, August the 10th. And my broadcast today is again just to reinforce the need for electoral reforms in Nigeria. In my last video, I had touched briefly on the matter, but because the elections are fast approaching and there are so many activities going on, but little has happened in the area of election reforms. Although it's desirable, but the agency Inec and the houses of Senate and House of Reps, they have not done anything at all. Or if they have, it's not yet been made public. Therefore, the citizens must arise and continue to push for a credible and far-reaching electoral reforms, because the success or otherwise of the 2027 elections largely depend on those reforms. I want to commend Randy Peters and all of the other activists who've been pushing, and he has done quite well. But I am here just to make some few observations. Although there has been the talk for election reforms, but when you look at the efforts, there are no alternatives being suggested. It's as though reforms are desired, but what are the reforms that are needed? I have listened to Mr. Randy Peters as he goes on from one radio or TV station to another. And some of the reforms he mentioned are just on the periphery. He's talked about the transmission of results from the polling booths and the server. Much as those ones are also necessary, but they are not the key to the success of the 2027 elections, because people are still agitated as to what happened with the 2023 elections when INEC, for whatever reason, switched off the server as it claimed there were glitches. And today, up until now, there has not been any explanations as to what those glitches were. And so as a result of that, the trust in INEC is at the lowest time, so low at this point. So Nigerians, both at home and in diaspora, are all, again, feeling a little bit uncertain with INEC. And INEC has not made any efforts to reassure the people or even to make any fresh commitment. And so as it stands today, 2025, no one is sure what INEC is planning to do, apart from coming up with a suggestion that prison inmates may be allowed to vote. And I hope also that Nigerians in diaspora will also have that same opportunity to vote as well. But what is critical is the election pattern. And so I would suggest to Mr. Randy Peters and also to all of those who are advocating and pushing for the necessary changes, which are, of course, long overdue. One, those suggestions are as follows. One, the reforms must be as clear as possible. The voting pattern is very important. Now, it has been seen that the secret ballot has not helped Nigeria because largely it's been bedeviled with rigging, snatching of ballot boxes, and electoral violence. The last elections were not spared of such unreasonable displays. Even the election observers also made some very uncomplimentary remarks. Therefore, what are these reforms being suggested? Mr. Randy Peters has not come out with what I may call a broad outline of such reforms. He has simply talked about making sure election results are transmitted and making sure the server is okay. But those ones are beneath the point. They are not really the major issue. The major issue is the election pattern. What pattern is it going to take? Is it secret ballot? Secret ballot hasn't worked in Nigeria. And so, I would suggest to Mr. Randy Peters to go and read up what Professor Humphrey Nwosu did during the Abiola elections. Professor Humphrey Nwosu, then of blessed memory, came up with a unique pattern that had not been used in any part of the world. He called it option A4. And I think at the time that he adopted that pattern because there was this myth at the time that no southern candidate could win a northern candidate in a presidential contest. And at that time, the contest was between Chief Moshood, Alhaji Chief Moshood, Abiola, and Alhaji Tofa. And so Professor Humphrey Nwosu, in his wisdom and ingenuity, came up with option A4. Option A4 was simply a pattern in which the aspirants' pictures or photographs were put on large boards and displayed at the polling stations, and people just keyed in behind them when the time for the voting was on. They just keyed behind those pictures. It was easy, it was simple, and because Abiola was quite popular and had a very good name recognition, he defeated Tofa. And so the secret ballot it doesn't necessarily mean that Nigeria must adopt secret ballot. It can be fine-tuned and indigenized. There has to be an indigenous part to any election system. And so Inec has failed so much in that regard. They have been organizing elections, but they have not given to Nigeria any well thought out indigenous pattern of voting. Okay? Now, option A4 may sound a little off what it should be. But the truth be told is that the secret ballot has also not helped Nigeria because it's been bedeviled with what? Rigging, chaos, violence, and all that. And it need not be like that. The option A4 was used by Professor Humphrey Nwosu many years ago. And that election was said to be the freest. It was simple, it was direct, and it produced the results the whole people accepted. That is the most important thing. What pattern or style of voting will be acceptable to Nigerians? What pattern of voting would help Nigerians to produce or elect the president that they will trust and work with? Because in 2023, there had been accusations left, right, and center. And even till present, some people have been brandishing results of who won and who didn't win. But today, or in 2025, efforts are being made by so many people, so many citizens, so that the 2027 elections can fare better. But INEC has not done much. INEC seems to be unperturbed. And from the look of things, the whole elections for 2027 is looking like a three-horse race. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar on one side, President Bola Tinubu, and Mr. Peter Obi. And from all indications, the older politicians are all hoping for rigging because they are not campaigning. You don't see what they are doing, just like it happened in 2023. And so, it is my humble opinion that the activists, all well-meaning Nigerians, home and abroad, should pressurize INEC and the Senate and the House of Reps to come up with acceptable changes as quickly as possible. But option A4 must be looked at again because it produced a wonderful result. The June 12th election of Chief MKO Abiola has remained the best simply because the INEC chair of the time, Professor Humphrey Wosu, decided to give to Nigerians a good election. And he broke off from the so-called secret ballot that he understood at the time was so flawed, with so much rigging, fighting, and all of that. And the option A4 came in handy, and almost everybody accepted the result. And once again, Nigeria is marching towards another election. Preparations are ongoing. Opposition parties are all over the place. But the umpire has remained distant and has not engaged Nigerians. And so it's also necessary that the push for election reforms must include the election pattern. So far, the Randy Peters and all of the other commentators, they've been talking about reforms, but those reforms seem not to have captured the real issue, which is the voting pattern. Secret ballot is not good for Nigeria, prone to rigging, violence, and discrepancies. Therefore, it's not mandatory that Nigeria must use secret ballot. Professor Humphrey Wosu used open option A4, which from every indication worked perfectly well, because so many of our people in the rural communities and areas find it difficult to understand the secret ballot. And the greater number of the people are in the villages. Option A4 serves best. It has been used before and it proved to be wonderful. INEC has failed to give to Nigeria a unique voting pattern, an indigenous voting pattern, an ingenious voting pattern that will be acceptable to all. Professor Humphrey Wosu did it many years ago and gave to Nigeria a unique system that produced a unique result. Again, the activists must now step up the game. They have sensitized the people. They have gone to so many radio stations and all that. It has now come to the point where all other interest groups must be brought on board. It's also necessary to start sharing leaflets, try to carry people along. Share out leaflets on the streets. Those leaflets necessarily must be written in different languages so that people will read and understand that they need to support the push for genuine electoral reforms. The ADC members, the opposition parties that are all over the place, stand to benefit from the electoral reforms. And so it is also necessary that the opposition members must lend their voices to the election reforms. And also, I do remember in 2015, then the current president or APC, the current ruling party, was in opposition. They held rallies in some parts of Nigeria and in Lagos in particular. So the opposition parties must also galvanize the people towards the election reforms by reaching out to people, by hosting talk shows, by peaceful demonstrations. Not that they are demonstrations, just peaceful gathering. Because it's also necessary that the country must be peaceful for the necessary changes to come in. And so I want to suggest that the election pattern option A4 worked very well, and there's no reason why INEC should not reconsider that, because the secret ballot is full of rigging, violence, discrepancies, and it has not produced acceptable results in the past 10 years. It is therefore high time INEC understood that it has a constitutional responsibility, civic responsibility, and also moral responsibility to bequeath to Nigeria an acceptable electoral pattern. The idea that every election cycle becomes a problem where people are afraid, people are not sure what's going to happen, even to the point where citizens of the country are stopped from voting in some parts of Nigeria. It's unacceptable. Where thugs intimidate bona fide citizens who want to cast their votes. Thugs will come out and say, oh, people will not vote in this area. People will not vote in that area. Those are also some forms of rigging. And if INEC does not rise up to the challenge, it must be held accountable, because no citizen of Nigeria should be stopped or disenfranchised. You must be allowed to vote for their own candidate. It doesn't matter which part of Nigeria you live, insofar as you're a Nigerian and you're 18 years, you must have the right to vote and be voted for. Therefore, it is necessary that INEC rises up to the occasion. Now they are considering inmates to vote. They should also consider those in diaspora to vote as well. But the election pattern is important. Option A4 worked perfectly. They can adopt option A4 right now for the next elections, so that people will come out and queue behind their candidates. There's nothing difficult about that. It's cheap, it's simple, it's possible. Nigeria has struggled so much because of elections. Every election cycle is a problem, and that got to stop. There's always need, and there should be need, that the election reform must also include penalties if the umpire fails to do or follow the laid down rules. There should be penalties. And all party talks must also be held accountable should they flout the rules. The transmission of the results ought to be direct from the polling booths straight to the national server for national elections, and for state elections from the polling booths to the state INEC offices. The idea of local government collections, state collections, those are avenues of rigging. There need not be any more all these local government collection. No. From the polling stations, polling booths you transmit results straight to INEC server. And INEC should also accredit party officials who will come to their office, head office, especially for national elections, the presidency, House of Senate and Reps. All party faithfuls, some party officials can be accredited to come to INEC so that when they open their servers, they see how those results will be collected. There's no need for local government, this state collect. No. Professor Mahmoud Yakub must rise up and think about his legacies. He has been there in the past decade, and all his efforts are not, they are not smart and good enough for Nigeria. Humphrey Nwosu did the elections of Abiola, I think it was in 1993 if I'm correct. And up till date, that election, it has been proven to be second to none. Because the INEC chair of the time, Professor Humphrey Nwosu, wanted to bequeath to legacy something reasonable. He adopted a different style. He used option A4, and he produced a wonderful result. I do believe that Professor Mahmoud Yakub can replicate that and bequeath to Nigeria a workable, simple, homegrown election pattern that can stand the test of time. Option A4 is possible. Nigeria need not to impress anybody, internationally or otherwise. What is important is the acceptance of that system by Nigerians. And I think Nigeria can do it. Nigeria is a good country. Nigeria is blessed. And all of us in diaspora want Nigeria to progress. Yes, we want our home country to progress. And elections are important in that regard. I want to thank you all for listening. I want you all to follow me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And I want you to share, to like, and to comment. I also want to urge Nigerians, both home and abroad, to rise up at this point, because Nigeria belongs to all of us. It is our lovely country, and we want the country to move forward. So we have to engage and to make our opinions known. We welcome, personally, I welcome the development that inmates and the prison or correctional centers in Nigeria will vote. It is also high time that those in diaspora can also vote. That will add color, and that will also help in advancing the electoral system in Nigeria. Thank you for listening. Like I said, please share, like, and comment. Follow me on YouTube, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, and follow me on Facebook. Thank you, and until I come your way again, remain blessed, and bye for now.